the Fantasy Flyer Pad. It is time for another episode of the Fantasy Flyer, episode 19, officially beyond the halfway now. We were there on Tuesday or Friday, excuse me. Today's Tuesday. That's what happens when I get days off for election day. So, episode 19. We are here to cover all of the week 9, almost 16
10.
now.
Week 10?
Well, now it's week.
Oh,
week
reviewing.
10.
Yes.
Reviewing week 9. See, now you think it's Friday. It's been rough, obviously. My name's Derek. That's Taylor. We're here to go over all of the fun stuff we usually do. It's our usual Tuesday show. Gonna start off with some 9, our news, injury notes, etc. As always, like the page, subscribe to YouTube, send us a postcard, send us a carrier pigeon, whatever you'd like to do. We appreciate it.
I would definitely like that. Somebody do that, please.
If someone could send me a carrier pigeon or like Hedwig from Hogwarts.
Yeah, right.
Send me Hedwig, that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, I'll let you take it away with a rather brief 9 segment. I think most teams got away with less injuries than normal, a below average amount.
Yeah.
But some of it's pretty big, so I'll let you take the wheel from here.
Yeah, just focusing on the big stuff. We'll keep the questionable stuff out of it this week, and we'll follow up on Friday. So the bye weeks for week 10, Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals, New England Patriots, and New York Jets. And then we'll kick it off here with the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, elbow. So he's currently listed as questionable, being evaluated for UCL. What was that? I don't even, ulnar, where is it? Yeah, ulnar collateral ligament. As well as some like related nerve damage around that injury. So yeah, that's it's definitely gives me some pause. But the team is hoping to have more information tomorrow, so keep an eye on that. Don't jump to conclusions yet, but obviously an elbow injury for a quarterback is not good. And he's a big part of the team, so that sucks. I don't know if you had any more you wanted to chat about that, or, I mean, we obviously don't have much information yet.
Until Friday, I don't think we got to address it too much.
Yeah.
We'll talk about on Friday, we'll talk about their very interesting matchup on Sunday, which I can almost guarantee you will be a host be host. But other than that, right now, there's nothing.
Spoilers.
Yeah, it's a big spoiler. It's an interesting matchup too. It's juicy.
Yeah. All righty. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. Carolina, Sam Darnold activated off of IR. So we'll see how that pans out. No word if he'll start this weekend, but I forget what happened with PJ Walker, but Baker came in and finished this game. So that
PJ Walker was bad.
Well, yeah, he was bad, but I didn't see him on any injury report. So was it just that he was bad, or did something happen?
From what I've gathered, it said he was bad. I think he was 3 for 14.
Yeah, he had negative fantasy points. So, yeah.
That's a 3 for 14 with a interception.
Yeah.
I could be wrong in the 14, but I'm pretty sure it was 3 completions.
So, yeah. Not that most people had any of the Carolina QBs. Unfortunately, I did, because I'm in a 20-team league and Tannehill was hurt, so I didn't have a lot of options. So yeah, that team is out of the hunt as far as I'm concerned. I've lost focus with that one.
We'll chat in a minute about it.
Moving on to Green Bay. Unfortunately, Romeo Doubs, he is out with a high ankle sprain, and it looks like it'll be 4 to 6 weeks. So that really stinks for the rookie and obviously the team that has really struggled. And that the outcome of that game was not at all what I expected. So he, Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, they all left the game. At least fortunately for Aaron. Wow, did I say Aaron Jones or Aaron Watson? Anyways, Aaron Jones, his ankle, they took x-rays and it came back negative, and they say that he will play this week. So that's good news. Definitely avoided a huge loss there.
They're gonna need him.
Yeah, he's basically the only thing, I guess, Lazard, that's working for this team right now. And then Christian Watson, it was thought it was a concussion. It looks like it's a chest injury, and he did not suffer a concussion. So that's, I guess, more possibly good news. We'll see how bad the chest injury is. Indianapolis, this makes sense because they were horrid. They fired Frank Wright, their head coach, and now Jeff Saturday will serve as the interim head coach.
Carry their guy. Goddamn.
Yes, we'll see how Jeff approaches things, but
Doesn't matter. Can't be
hopefully,
worse.
yeah, right. It can't be worse. So for me, I'm hoping that JT is healthy and they just say go ham, JT. Jacksonville, Evan Engram. I didn't actually see him on a recent injury report, but he did leave the game Sunday with some sort of back injury. So we'll see if that crops back up this week, and how that plays out for Sunday. The Raiders are releasing Jonathan Abrams, so he will be a free agent if he clears waivers.
They face off against Indianapolis this week, and also I'm going to step out on a limb here. I don't think Sam Ellinger's starting Sunday.
He is not.
It seems that way. Did you see he's not? I didn't. I was literally guessing. So that's
No,
okay.
I was just saying he has not played well. He has not been an improvement. Obviously, it's a team issue, a coaching issue, like offensive line, what have you. So
Yep.
to take Matt Ryan out and put in the rookie and try to ride him for the rest of the season after the 2 weeks we've seen with him is not worth it. That's what we were told originally, but then you keep seeing Matt Ryan on the injury report. So yeah, we'll see how that pans out. Hopefully Ryan is healthy, and I think that the team would benefit largely from playing him. And then our final bit of notes here, San Francisco, Devo, who was out before the bye, he is questionable. So I guess that's trending in the right direction, but definitely keep an eye on him. And then not that it means much now that they have Christian McCaffrey, but Elijah Mitchell is designated to come off of IR. So I don't know if they'll incorporate him a little bit, but I don't know that we care because McCaffrey was phenomenal in his second game with them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just a couple follow-up notes. Evan Ingram, like I said, until we see him on an injury report, don't go jumping to a tight end waiver wire just yet. Jonathan Abrams matters because they take on the Colts this week. And if there's one place the Colts need, it's moving the ball. So it only helps a little bit. I don't think that's good for their defense, and the Raiders' defense has already been very poor. Yeah, all in all, good nines segment. We'll have more on Friday, like our usual. We get deeper into it. I also have Friday off this week for Veterans Day. A lot of folks do. Quick side note off of the football. If you haven't voted, for anyone on the East Coast, it's 8:00. Hopefully you guys voted today. So I'll go out and I'll say good for you guys on voting. If you voted for Friday, happy Veterans Day ahead of time because this will be posted before Friday. So to anyone who has served this country, thank you for your service. Moving on, we're gonna go to the Week 9 review. Actually, you know what? No, let's do the power rankings first. So Week 5, little short story flashback. Week 5, we had an episode that Taylor was a little boo-boo for, and he wasn't around. And I thought it would be a good idea to start building a fantasy flyer power rankings. Now, it's not all 32 teams. It's not every position and every quarterback. We could talk about that and debate it for hours and hours and hours. But we do have a top 5 for most of the positions. And I think we're going to really briefly go over all the positions. We'll go over the top 5 and the bottom 5 teams, which have changed since the first week. Week 13 or 14, we'll revisit this. And then, of course, at the end of the season, into the preseason, we'll do like a 2-tiered one where the teams are coming off of and going into the postseason, excuse me. So for our quarterback position, and I will put them on the screen somewhere down in this neck of the woods. But the quarterback, number 1, Jalen Hurts. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. The team is still 8-0, and there's been a lot of debate on social media, Twitters, and whatnot about the validity of that 8-0. 8-0 is 8-0, so that's my take on that. Quarterback 2, Patrick Mahomes. highest scoring offense in the league. I think still. There's not. If they're not, it's very close. They were the highest scoring offense going into Sunday Night Football. And anyway, Joe Burrow, number 3, uh, minus some hiccups. Been a relatively good. He had a 450-yard game last weekend. Um, led, I wouldn't say actually led, but was along for the ride this past Sunday when Joe Mixon did everything, including sell hot dogs in the stands. Um, Quarterback 4, Geno Smith. If you haven't ridden his consistency in a fantasy playoff or in a fantasy format, I should say, it is probably imperative that you try and trade for him if you have any of the lesser quarterbacks, if you've been in a quarterback problem. Quarterback number 5, Josh Allen. I probably would have put him third, and I think Taylor, you'd agree with this, but after the game against the Jets, shaky is at best what I would. The Bills themselves have been that there you go. I was about to say that one coming through. But the Bills have been kind of shaky. So, do you have any? I mean, you agreed with most of these when I sent them to you. I think all of these. Is there anything that surprises you? Do you have any notes to add? Anybody who you want to see on that top 5 list who should be there going forward? Anybody who's growing? I have an argument that the biggest grower for me in this last 4 weeks has been Justin Fields. I still put him in my bottom part of the top 10, somewhere in like that 8 to 9 range for quarterback. That's probably the only other name that I would say would be the fastest riser, not necessarily top 5 worthy yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him top 5. But I would agree he is on the rise. No, I mean, I think the biggest surprise for a lot of people, I'm not totally surprised and I don't disagree, but Geno being in there is obviously something that I think a lot of people wouldn't have expected. But obviously we know he's having a phenomenal season compared to what his expectations for both him and the team. I think some other names that people may have expected to see on the list, but I'm sure the owners of these players would agree they haven't had the seasons you've wanted. Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, they are all not performing as expected. Herbert, I mean, he had the chest injury, which until last week, an injury analyst expert was saying this last week was the first week that they expected him to be fully healed from that. So moving forward, we may see better outcomes, but he also hasn't had Keenan Allen. He's without Mike Williams. So he's making the most of obviously everything he has, but he's had a lot of team issues that have not helped him out. But yeah, no, I'm totally in agreement with this list. Josh Allen maybe above Geno, but like that, like you said, the game against the Jets, man, good for the Jets. I did not expect that.
Oh no, yeah, that's we'll talk about that a little more when we get to the Jets game, because that's one of the games that is not in our express lane, and for good reason, because there's a little bit of a formula building for how you can beat the Bills, and I think the juggernaut teams kind of need that you can see the patterns arise. So right, to the RB position, our RB1 is Austin Eckler. He's done everything right. I don't need to trip over it. He balances 20 to 35 fantasy points a game.
Yeah, easily.
Granted, probably the easier part of his schedule for the past 3-4 weeks, but still RB1. RB2, Travis Etienne. There's nobody in his way to steal reps from. He's got back-to-back 100-yard games, multiple touchdowns, and I think both games, right? He had 2 this past week. He had at least 1. So he's had 3 over his last 2 weeks at minimum.
Yeah, he did have 2 this week.
Yeah, so he's had 4 over his last 2 weeks. Like he's absolutely fine. And after a slower start with the intrusion of James Robinson, that's no longer. So RB3, Derrick Henry. He makes Tennessee go boom. And the only thing that makes Tennessee go boom, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I don't want to get too much into it, but that's what makes him stay on this top 5 for me, is that Tennessee is 5-3 and they don't throw the ball like at all.
Right.
Like they've thrown the ball in the last 2 weeks between this past Sunday night's game against the Chiefs and last week. They've thrown the ball a grand total of 24 times,
Something like that. Yeah.
26 times. Patrick Mahomes threw 64 times on Sunday alone. 66, something like disgusting. And they're 5-3. RB4, Christian McCaffrey, again, another one of those Swiss utility running backs. Put him anywhere, he's going to do it. 49ers still got to steal for him. Let's just talk that up. RB5, Ramondre Stevenson. Not carrying the team, but dependable on both pass catching and running. He's a bulldozer in the middle. He can run to the outside. He's pretty good at breaking tackles, not, or avoiding tackles in any way. So I like Ramondre is probably the biggest grower for me on this list in the last 4 weeks since we did this. Since I did this round, he's probably the biggest grower. I don't know of another running back that is like off the top of my head been as explosive as him other than Austin Eckler, who's obviously RB1. But I don't know of anyone else who's been as consistent and as there for his team as Ramondre Stevenson over the last 4 weeks totally. So he's my RB5. Same question to you. Any names you don't like on this or you don't see on this list that you'd like to see there? Any rising stars for you?
I mean, I think you touched on two of the rising stars, ETN and Ramondre. This one, I was a little surprised at ETN being number 2, especially with Henry and McCaffrey right there. Names that, I mean, the running backs are tough. Like you have Barkley, Chubb, which not obviously, but unfortunately Chubb has kind of fallen off a little bit. So I have no disagreement with him being off the list, but Barkley, I mean, like I said, they're now at this point in the season is a handful of good running backs. So to name 5 is tough. Barkley is one that, borderline. Jacobs, as of like week 4, yeah, has been insane. He has one bad week 8. I guess week 9 wasn't phenomenal either, but
Yeah, that's what he had back-to-back weeks that were a little bit more flop, and that kept him off of this list for me. Was that there is not a totality of 4 weeks where I've seen upward growth or a maintain of that.
yeah,
And that's what kept me from putting him on this list. Now, of course, again, you can put this in any order and we could debate it all year long, but
right.
I think these are all fair points that Nick Chubb, like you said, kind of fell back to planet Earth. He had one really good game. Actually, I think it was against the Bengals, where he had 2 touchdowns and ran for 100 and some yards. But other than that, he's been closer to 100. He might get in the end zone once. Hasn't been the dominant Nick Chubb that we've seen.
Yeah.
I just didn't. I saw there's a little hole in everywhere. And Saquon, here's the other issue with me is that Saquon had that stinker against the Seahawks. And then he had one other game where he didn't put up, like, he had 53 yards against the Seahawks.
Yeah, the touchdown did salvage it from fantasy points perspective, but yeah, totally not the output at least on the ground that you would want.
Right. These aren't folks that should be saved by fan. I guess that's another thing as far as the running back and the wide receiver. These aren't folks that should be saved by touchdowns. I think
Yeah.
their workload with or without a touchdown grants them this, this I don't know how to say, like this point bearing dependability. The Giants going forward face really good teams for Saquon. Texans and Lions are the next 2 after the bye week. Then they face the Cowboys. Meh. Commanders, sure. Like, why not? Eagles, meh. Commanders again. So like there's some chances for him to return when we come talking about this in week 14.
Yeah. I mean, some other names, like another rising star that wouldn't break this list, but is notable, especially since he's a rookie. Dameon Pierce.
Exactly who you're gonna say, and I don't disagree. He's cracked the top 10. He's cracked the top 10 for me. Breece Hall was up until he got injured. Breece Hall would have been very close to the top 5 because of how now Dameon Pierce is, for me, he's like the RB 7 or 8 on this. And if he keeps pushing this Texans team to lengths that they should not be by roster standpoint reaching, he's probably going to break the top 5. He's done very, very well. He's a 4th-round steal for them.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
now they have to not trade him.
um, and then also obviously another rookie here, Kenneth Walker, also on the rise. Those two guys, more so honestly, Kenneth Walker. He's had bigger weeks than Damian Pierce. It looks like that. I don't think I necessarily realized that. Um, yeah. So yeah, those are two other rising guys that we could see more out of. Kamara has made a turn,
Mhm.
so he could get back up in there.
Right.
Cook, Dalvin Cook, and Miles Sanders, they're like consistent enough, but not top 5 worthy. Um, and then Mixon, he has had incredible usage all season except for like 2 games, and it wasn't until last week that he just went off. Um, so I don't know if like a regression to the mean in a good way for him is coming, or if we'll continue to see them like use him a lot and struggle.
He had 78 fantasy points on PPR formats through 8 weeks.
Right.
And then he had 55. Actually, 7 weeks. Did he have a bye? There might have been a bye.
He did have a bye, you're right.
So 78 through 7 weeks, and then he goes for 55.1 fantasy points in a PPR format. And
Oh, I'm
obviously,
sorry. This is his bye. Never mind. He hasn't had a
okay,
bye yet.
this is his bye coming up.
Yep.
So okay, so that's through 8 weeks. That's also not good. So like the 55 is great. It's absolutely outstanding. It's, I believe, the second highest fantasy point total given for any game.
Something like that.
It's great, but are you rushing to trade for Joe Mixon? I disagree with that.
Right.
You
Yeah,
have to
no,
let. Are you rushing to trade for Justin Fields because he had a 42-point day? Probably not, because you probably have somewhat of a better starter. You didn't draft Justin Fields on your top 12
right.
or your top 10. Did you pick him number 2? Probably. Are you angry you left him on your bench? Very much so. But the only consolation where he's good that he's left on your bench is, oh no, I missed 42-point Justin Fields for 39-point Patrick Mahomes. Like, oh no, the 3 points. That those aren't, you can't jump to those high bars. I would not go out of my way to trade for Joe Mixon.
Yeah, my team would have to be hurting to do that.
Oh, if your team was hurting to the point of the running back, then you probably should have done it weeks ago because you knew
Right.
you were buying low.
Yeah.
But that he burst out for me. I was one, and I'll admit to when I said it, I said he's not trustworthy until he starts doing something. Well, he did a lot of things. So,
Yeah.
can you play him? Hopefully, that's the way I look at it. There's a lot of offense to be had in Cincinnati, but who gets it on a weekly basis?
Yeah. But yeah, those are some of the other names that I could see a couple of those, like when we do this later in the season, possibly being on the list. The
Yep.
quarterbacks, honestly, I don't see them changing too
A whole lot.
much. Yeah. Running backs,
It'll
I could see
it'll
more of a
take some
change.
fall offs. Yeah.
Yeah.
For the wide receivers, I think this should be a pretty standard list for everybody. This one, there's Tyreek Hill at 1, Justin Jefferson 2, AJ Brown 3, Stephon Diggs 4, Jalen Waddle 5. Those you can probably mix the bottom 2 and the top 3 in their own separate little, depending on which way your opinion goes, and you aren't really wrong. Jefferson was shaky for me putting on this list, and then he had 115 yards and a touchdown. And I said, good. But he's consistent for 10 to 14 targets. 8 to 14, I guess. I'll lower it
Mhm.
even a little bit. But
Yeah.
he's, like I said, workload's guaranteed. Tyreek Hill, on Tua's worst day, he's catching 80 to 100 yards. On his worst day. Same for Waddle. Stephon Diggs, guaranteed 10 to 12 targets. He kind of got held in check against the Jets. Thank you, Sauce Gardner. But 10 targets. Good for him. AJ Brown, officially saying wide receiver 1 in Philly is stupid. He's been that since week 1, but he's got the same workload, trustworthy. Wide receiver that is up and coming. You can fill in this gap with probably 5 different players. So I recently trying to think of one off the top of my CD Lamb. That
Yeah,
probably not my 6 at this point, but he's
no.
up and coming. He has less drops than all 5 of those people I just named. If that makes you actually, he might have one more than Justin Jefferson. I might have thought.
Up and coming, I would throw Olave on there.
Yeah, because there's no one else to throw to. But
Yeah,
whatever the reason is, it's working. He's starting to get that workload.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a really really good name to throw out there. So there's so many probably good wide receivers. Hopkins
yeah, that's true. If
Hopkins is
you,
starting to come along.
yeah,
Tyler Lockett has a very high floor.
that's a name I was going to throw out. He doesn't break the top 5, but very consistent.
Yeah, and that's to the tight end, Travis
Actually, real
Kelce.
quick, Cooper Cup.
Go ahead.
Why don't you have him on the list?
That's a great question. That's a good. There's another name you could put in the top 5. I don't have Cooper Cup there because his team's bad.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean,
That's
he
the only
himself is
I
relatively
immediately rule
consistent,
out, and
but
that's not fair to him, by the way. That's not fair
right,
to him because he has Matt Stafford threw for 160 yards, and Cooper Cup had 115 of them this past week.
127. Yeah,
Yeah, something stupid.
yeah.
Cooper Cup should probably be on this list, but I in good conscience can't put him on there.
The Rams team. Yeah, I get that.
We'll chat about that again too. To the tight end position, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, 1-2. Again, you can kind of flip them back and forth due to the game that Mark Andrews just missed last night on Monday Night Football. Put Kelce 1, targets galore, go to town. Number 3, Zach Ertz. Somehow, with the emergence of Hopkins, has still found himself with 4 to 7 targets a game. He's targeted in the red zone. There's no running on the Cardinals team, which I'll also talk about later on this show. Yeah, next week it's Rams versus Cardinals. No one will run the ball, except for Kyler Murray. Number 4, TJ Hawkinson. He had a really good. I was shaky putting him here until he got traded. All right, so here's this game, and then they said they're going to use him, and you and me talked on Sunday morning, and it was like, oh, I hope it's not just for pass blocking. And then he goes out and has the second most targets on the team.
Yeah,
Caught all 9 of them for 70 yards. I think his ceiling went up by this trade to the Vikings, which is kind of crazy to say. But Justin Jefferson had 115 yards. Every time that happened with Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit, Hawk had 4 catches for 40 yards.
right.
So my tight end number 5 is Greg Dulcich. And the reason is, A, he walked on the field and caught touchdowns, or a touchdown. So that's good after being injured for the first 5 weeks. Good start. He's also averaging the 6th most fantasy points per game from weeks 6 through 9 for tight ends, which is
Yeah,
great start. I don't know of any other name that slips in here with a team that needs as much help as Darren Waller don't fit here. Kyle Pitts don't fit in this top 5, although he should be. George Kittle is probably the closest name that I could fit on here, and I think that makes sense. The reason I would halt on him is because of how much is around him between
yeah,
Debo, Ayuk, and specifically Christian McCaffrey. If I put Kittle on here, McCaffrey can't be higher than 5 because you can be, but the targets, there's only so many to spread. Like I said, Jimmy G ain't throwing 45 times a game, and he hasn't so far.
yeah.
So he threw 25 times, connected on 21 of them last week. He had a bye week 9. Week 8 had 21 for 25, 200 and some yards. That's great. Christian McCaffrey had 9 of those targets.
Yeah. Yeah, Kittle only had 5 of the targets. He has had a good past 3 weeks leading into the bye. So, I mean, 2 of those weeks he had touchdowns that kind of salvage it a little bit. But yeah, I would say, to your point, Kittle flirts with this list. I would also say that Goddard flirts with the list. But
A lot of names around him too.
yeah, I mean, beyond that, I use the word flirts with this list because those guys are in it. They're bouncing up, they're bouncing down. They're not consistent. The names you listed off are much more consistent.
And much to that point, we could see Dulcich not be that consistent coming back from the bye. he's starting to get a name of somebody you have to watch.
Right.
Fair. He's multiple weeks of between 6 and 10 targets on Denver is good. Like, even though it's still Denver and there's figuring some crap out, but
Yeah.
now we move on to the juicy part. We have 5 minutes before we have to take a break. So real quick, top 5 teams. No surprise. I don't think we have to talk much about these in order for us. Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Vikings, Bills. Bills probably not losing to the Jets would have kept them at 2 for me.
Mm.
I think they take a little hit in the power rankings. I joked once they lost to the Jets that, oh, they're slipping from 2 to 15 in everyone's power rankings, which of course is exaggeration. But they that's a tough game to lose. That's a team that when you looked at the schedule on week 3, you're like, I'll win.
Yeah.
It didn't work out that way. The Vikings earned a spot on this list because of how they handled their comeback versus the Commanders. Should they have been in that position? No.
Right.
But the Commanders also got a lucky extra block from a referee for 7 of their points. So it's just call a spade a spade. Cowboys are on bye. Their defense is literally the only reason that I'm putting them in this list. They're flirting with most power rankings in the top 5, and it's because of the defense. It's not like we see them go out and put up 40 points, although they did against the Bears, but outlier right now. And then Chiefs and Eagles, highest scoring offense and best looking team in PFF for roster construction. So there's no reason to argue. The Eagles should be on everyone's top 5 power rankings. I don't think that's an exaggeration.
No.
Not much to really talk about with those 5. I think you'd agree. Kind of like
No, yeah. I guess Seahawks I would see being very close.
Yep.
And then the only other thing I
49ers.
would say is Eagles, Chiefs, Bills. Those 3 teams, their quarterbacks are in the top 5 QB power rankings. So
It's almost like it's, a correlation.
yeah, exactly.
Good quarterback play means your team scores and you win games.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh.
not to mention that they all also have players at other positions on this list, but
Right.
yeah, I wanted to make that correlation
Multiple
with the QB for sure.
Right. Bottom 5 teams. I'm actually going to read more than bottom 5. So I'll give you from 32. 32, I have the Texans. I argued back and forth with a swap with the Panthers because the Panthers are 31. Roster construction for me, I feel like DJ Moore, you have a little bit more there. And if Brandon Cooks doesn't want to play for you, he's not going to.
Right.
So if that changes and Brandon Cooks comes back, this might be that you could still interchange us. Number 30 is the Steelers, young quarterback, no running game. They just traded away one of their wide receivers. They've officially sold this year, and I think that's smart. So good for them. Unfortunately, you're bottom 5. 29 is the Rams for me. We'll chat on this a little bit more as we get later on. 28 is the Lions. Probably a top 10 team in the first 3 games of the season, has woefully fallen. I know they beat the Packers. They didn't earn it. So
No.
the Packers gave that one to them. 27 and 26. 27 is the Colts. So I don't think that's a surprise. The head coaching change will hopefully bring about new days. We'll chat about that as well. 24 is the Raiders, which is my honorable mention. I guess that's really where I'm going with this entire list right now. Honorable mention for. The Raiders have looked atrocious. They're 2-6. Devontae Adams is the only thing keeping them out of this bottom 5.
Yeah.
And that's it. Anything for you? We got about a minute and a half before we got a break, but anything else for you on this spot? I think it's kind of standard. These are the worst teams. They don't perform. They're picking and pulling pieces. It's tough to put the Texans down there with a great running back like you talked about in Dameon Pierce, but they're still not winning football games. He's not the Derrick Henry of putting a team
right.
He's not putting a team over. So
yeah, no, they just don't have enough pieces to your point. And yeah, I mean, them and the Panthers neck and neck for the last place. Yeah, the Steelers are really unfortunate. Young QB kind of keeping their their results at tempered. Rams, yeah, whatever. Lions, without Hawkinson now, that really pulls them down. But they were in a lot of games. They put up a lot of points. They just have a crappy D. So, yeah, these there's like you mentioned the other teams that could be down in here. So
Yeah, there's a lot of them. And that's that's just the truth of the matter. Is these teams, they mix and they shuck and they jive, so to speak.
yeah.
When we come back, we're gonna go on to our week 9 review. Taylor, I'll let you sign us, bring us to the break.
See y'all on the flip.
Deuce. And welcome back. This is part 2 of Fantasy Flyer, episode 19. We just finished up the 9 and our power rankings for the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and your top and bottom 5 teams. Real quick, I found it. I was searching during our break. I found my last lineup. It's from episode 10. So following the pattern, just about every 10 episodes, we're going to do this. My bottom 5 teams last time: Bears, Broncos, Colts, Panthers, and Commanders. So only one of those teams, technically, Colts narrowly above it.
Yeah.
Only one of those teams still exists on the bottom 5. Everybody else has made, specifically the Bears and the Broncos, I think, some big steps forward.
Yeah.
And the top 5 teams were Bills, Chiefs, Eagles, Bucks, Ravens. So I think it's fun to see how this, like, Bills, Chiefs, Eagles, yeah, stays there. They're all on the list. Bucks, fun
Yeah.
to talk about that. Ravens, probably in the 10 to 15 range for me right now.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah. So I'm gonna look back on those. Obviously, now I have to remember it's just about every 9 to 10 episodes that we'll end up hitting this. So now I can look back when we get to the 3/4 of the way through the season. I guess we'll talk. But we'll go on to the week 9 review. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, and then the express lane. So we'll start off real quick. Vikings and Commanders. This was a host v host game, if I'm not correct, which I did not add into the show plan.
It was a host v host, and I thought of this after I watched this game. 20-17 is exactly the score that you said. Something like, that's such a boring, chalk one to throw up, and there it is.
So you want to know the big irony in that? There was not only this game that was 20-17. There was 1, 2, 3, 4 20-17 scores this week.
Oh my God.
Yep. Chiefs, Titans, this game. Chargers, Falcons.
I see Bills, Jets. Yeah, let me see.
Bills, Jets.
Yep.
Jets, Chargers, Falcons. 4 20-17 games. Just as soon as they're like, that never happens. That hasn't happened all year. 4 of them. Any Hoosers. Vikings, they had a harder time than I expected with Washington.
Yeah.
Both teams were creating they were pushing back to the quarterback. They were pushing through offensive lines, which more makes sense for the Vikings to do so to Washington, to the Commanders, but I didn't see the Commanders doing that to Kirk Cousins and making him move out of the pocket at times. Big bright spot. Didn't take long to get TJ Hawkinson involved. We talked about this earlier. Minnesota is 3rd in PFF roster construction, with only Philadelphia and Kansas City ahead of them with the addition of Hawk. So there's no reason, they can go out and probably finish the season at 12-5, 13-4 now. And that's good for the NFC. I mean, the NFC North is pretty much locked up anyway after watching that abysmal game between Detroit and Green Bay. Spoiler alert, that's on the express lane because it's an absolute wet diaper of a game. Washington seemed like they made some changes at halftime. They got the brick from the referee, which I don't know, maybe that was one of the changes. They slipped him a 50 or something. But Washington seemed to they were up by 4 or down by 4, then they were up 17-7 due to creative running and that play.
Yeah.
For the most part, Curtis Samuel, who had like a 40-yard or something touchdown, in between 3 defenders.
49, yeah.
Yeah. The impressive part though is how Minnesota fought back, because they got a field goal, made it 17-10. They ended up with an interception at some point. Harrison Smith picked off Heineke, I believe. And here come the Vikings. Cousins gets hurt at a certain point. You get one play from Nick Mullins,
Mhm.
the old forgotten corpse of Nick Mullins. It was not a good throw either that he had. He had one shot, like Eminem says,
-3 yards.
-3 yards. So at least it wasn't an interception. Could have been worse.
Right.
But Kirk Cousins he launched a deep ball to Justin Jefferson with a few minutes in the fourth. Anything to move the ball, get through. He had a couple 3-and-outs before the injury, and then he leads this team on a wicked drive down as it's tied 17-17, and there's a field goal to win it for the Vikings. Clutch
Yeah.
moments.
Did you see that end of the game?
I probably did, but watching through all of the highlights and watching back footage, I don't
Okay.
know.
So they had they basically they couldn't get the touchdown, obviously, so they went to go do a field goal. They made the field goal, but there was a penalty, and it didn't change anything, but it was around 2 minutes, so they basically just kneeled the ball because Washington didn't have any timeouts left, and ran the clock down, and then did another field goal so that Washington couldn't do a 2-minute drill and try to come back. So without that penalty, Washington could have attempted to, at the very least, tie it and go into OT, but they had some penalty that caused them to not get that opportunity.
Penalties will do that.
Mhm.
It makes sense that that's how the Commanders lose. That's unfortunately the best way I can put it, is because if what a more Washington Commanders way of losing a football.
Right.
Um, to Cousins, like I said, to Kirk Cousins' credit, he threw from behind most of this game. He was behind on pace to advance on 4 straight drives in the second half. Washington did something to bother the living hell out of him. Minnesota also was there to sack Heineke 3 times for 23 yards. They actually had a 4th sack, but Zadarius Smith decided to take Heineke down by his face mask. So they were there. Both teams were. But again, Kirk Cousins, he's very good, and it wasn't a primetime game, so you knew it was happening.
Yeah.
They have a lot of weapons under pressure. Like Hawkinson had 9 for 9, 70 yards. Justin Jefferson 7 catches on 13 targets, 115 yards and a touchdown. Welcome back to the end zone. Adam Thielen 3 catches for 7 yards, 3 catches for 7 targets, 67 yards. Cousins 22 for 40, 265 yards throwing, had a pair of touchdowns and an interception. Dalvin Cook 17 carries for 47 yards, largely choked up on the run game. Did Washington? He did have a touchdown in the receiving game, 2 catches, 9 yards. Hopefully, you guys listen to me saying sit KJ Osborne because he had 2 targets and no catches. And I think that's going to be the kind of the way it's going to go. It's going to be the 4 names I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Hawkinson, Jefferson, Thielen, and Cook. That's all they need. For Washington, Heineke, 15 for 28, 149 yards, also a pair of touchdowns and an interception. Brian Robinson, 13 carries for 44 yards. Antonio Gibson, 11 carries, 36 yards, 2 catches, 11 yards in the air. Curtis Samuel, 3 catches for 4 targets, 65 yards and a touchdown. And Terry McLaurin, 5 catches on 9 targets, 56 yards. Washington goes to Philly next week. And the interesting game I mentioned in part 1, Minnesota travels to Buffalo in a battle of the 7-1 versus 6-2 now. 6-3? 7-1 versus 6-3. Yes.
Yeah.
Vikings have had their bye, Bills have not. Anything else for you?
Bills have had a bye. Sorry, 6-2.
Get the hell out.
They
You're right.
just
No, the Jets are 6-3.
That's right.
Why.
Yep.
So are the Patriots?
6-3 now.
No, Miami.
Miami, yeah.
Patriots are 5-4.
Yeah.
Anything else from this one? That was pretty straightforward.
If,
I would say I don't really have a waiver wire for this one, unfortunately. If Gibson's
the only name I would throw out is Curtis Samuel, in terms of he may be the least owned of the names that are worthwhile mentioning.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Next game, Dolphins and Bears. Another host v host. We both got 3 points for getting Minnesota right. No one had the score right. You get the 3 points for this one. but I was a lot closer than you probably gave me credit for.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for some creative, not creative, but I guess just some standout stops from Miami, this game probably is a Bears win. Two clutch stops in the fourth quarter for a rallying Bears team.
Hmm.
I don't know if the Bears offense is that good or Miami's defense is not quite in the swing of things with a whole new piece in the middle and Bradley Chubb, but um, big offensive show out for both teams. Bears look good. They're designing the offense around Justin Fields, who went absolutely nuts on the ground. It's helped them tremendously. And like I said, they're climbing a power rankings. I would put them in that 10 to 15 slot with the Ravens right now. Fields breaks a record. Can't forget about that. He had more rushing yards than Tyreek Hill had receiving, and I think that's fun to note. 178 yards on the ground by Justin Fields. Breaks Michael Vick's record for most rushing yards by a quarterback by 5 yards.
Damn.
Yeah. Chase Claypool was inserted into the pass game rather immediately. I think at the end of it, it's just going to allow more offensive play calling space. Like you got to guard the edges a little more. Cole Kmet had 2 touchdowns in this game, so the middle is a little more free. At least it seems that way. Miami's defense isn't horrible. They're there. They do things. Well, I mean, there's teams that don't do things. Like
Right.
the Panthers defense against the Bengals. Somehow. But I feel like if you're making the defense space, you have a little bit more route running creativity. Darnell Mooney had caught 7 of his 8 targets for 43 yards and a touchdown. Cole Kmet 5 for 6, 41 yards, 2 touchdowns. Claypool only had 2 catches, but he was tied for second in targets on the team.
Right.
With 6. He's gonna be there. And I don't think fantasy wise, he's like super viable because this is still Justin Fields he only threw for 123 yards.
Yeah.
You're not going to get an 80, 90 or 100-yard receiver unless everyone else is shut out. The team's winning with them not shutting out the rest of their receivers, not making somebody be, they're not loading up to Dante Pettis for a 75-yard touchdown and then not throwing the ball again.
Yeah.
So they probably could at times, but it seems like the team works a lot better when that's not the case. So, for Miami, obviously it's Tua, Waddle, and Hill. The Tua, Waddle, Hill gang.
And kind of Jeff Wilson. He's I was surprised. He outdid
outperformed Mostert. Yes, Colonel
same
Mustard
amount of carries.
Yes, Colonel Mustard was outperformed by Sir Wilson. The volleyball. That's what makes me want to think. Sir Wilson. Well done.
Oh.
Yeah, it is easier for Tua when you have 2 100-yard receivers.
Yeah, really.
But Wilson had Jeff Wilson 9 carries, 51 yards. Mostert had 9 carries, 26 yards. He did have the touchdown, so saved someone who was depending on Jeff Wilson to not be used as much. I'm surprised that he got out on the field as much and got as many carries, but it shows that he's a little adaptable. And like you said, when he got traded, it's Shanahan's system.
Right.
So it's hey, this playbook looks awful familiar,
Exactly.
Tua 21 for 30, 302 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's becoming, like, fantasy wise, a top 5 scorer weekly. Like, it's Mahomes is there for the most part. Justin Fields was an outlier this week, but last week Tua was the QB1. I think he was QB3 just behind those 2 this week. So Tyreek Hill, 7 catches on 8 targets, 143 yards and a touchdown. Almost half of Tua's yards in the air were to Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle, 5 catches, 7 targets, 85 yards and a touchdown. Again, there's a reason they're both on the Fantasy Flyer wide receiver rankings. They just don't, like, those 2 by themselves, 228 yards. Again, it's crazy. For Chicago, Justin Fields, 17 for 28. Threw the ball a little more, I guess, than I thought. I didn't know he had 28, even though I wrote this. 123 yards, had 14 carries, 178 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. If you want to know how to get 42 points as a quarterback without throwing the ball for 500 yards, that's how. Montgomery and Herbert combined for 69
It's so cool.
yards. Mooney, Darnell Mooney, like I said, 7 for 8, 43 yards and a touchdown. And Claypool had the 2 catches on 6 targets. Chicago hosts Detroit.
I hate to break it up, but it was only 59. You really forced in that 69.
Really? What did they?
36 and 23.
Yeah, you're right. That was bad. I did
No,
bad
but
math.
no, it's fine. I mean, we enjoyed the drop, so.
My bad. Chicago hosts Detroit next week. I'm going to take Chicago on that. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah.
No interest in choosing anything with Detroit right now. Miami will host the Cleveland Browns. I believe the Browns are coming off a bye. Am I correct?
Yes.
Pretty sure.
I'm like 99% sure. Yeah.
There we go. Okay. I thought so. I thought I wasn't wrong, but so you're gonna get 3 points for that host fee host. I will take a big 0 because Chicago didn't win. Although they very easily got to the next game. Bills at the Jets. Upset of the week. The Jets won 20-17. Let's talk into this. I've noticed now a pattern with 2 games that the Bills have lost this year. There's something that's happened between the teams, the opposing team, that has made it easier for them to win. And both of these games, they've won producing half as many yards in the air or less than Josh Allen. So they're getting possession of the ball and they're being effective taking care of it. On the offensive side, the key is defensively. The Jets all season long have created pressure without blitzing. It's come from the forefront. It's come from their line. Josh Allen was sacked for 5 times for 22 yards in this game. Now, he also ran for 86 yards, had 2 touchdowns. The only thing that saved his fantasy day, respectively. He did fumble it twice, lost 0. You can assume both of those were probably setbacks for the drive, if not the set of downs they're on. But New Jersey, wrong. Right state, wrong team. New York Jets. I saw NYJ and I went straight to New Jersey. The Jets outrushed Buffalo 34-22. Okay, and as far as carries, they had a better completion percentage, 72% to the Bills 53 from Josh Allen. And they won in every major defensive category. The Bills had 74 tackles, the Jets had 56. But the Jets had more pass deflections, more sacks, more pressures, and more QB hits.
And they had interceptions.
Right. If you look back, well, that's not so consistent with the Miami game, but yes, that helps in this situation. Miami, who they lost to previously, Josh Allen threw for over 400 yards, and Tua had less than 200. Okay. If you look at the stats in that game, it is the exact same recipe. They beat them in every defensive category. They were simply better defensively. Most teams, you say, got to beat this team offensively. They're freight train. That may not be the issue. That may not be the way to beat the Bills. Don't go forcing it down their throat.
Right.
Beat them by making sure they don't beat you. That's the only thing I can. And I went back and I looked at it. I was like, wow, this is kind of crazy. Miami had less turnovers. They beat Buffalo in all major defensive stats, had a better completion percentage on way less yards. We remember when that game happened and you and me sat back and we went, how the hell? You have 500 yards of offense.
Right.
Almost all of it exclusively from Josh Allen. Spoiler alert. Same thing here.
Yeah.
And, right? He led the team in rush yards. He obviously had the pass yards. But they created hell for him on the defensive end. The method to this seems to be you have to outperform their defense. You're not competing with the offense. You have to outperform their defense. You can do what you have to do on the offensive side, which varies for so many teams, right? We're going to see the Vikings go in there, who have a very, very, especially with the addition of TJ Hawkinson, they can do about 9 different things on any given offensive play. Everything from play action to RPOs to shortcuts to in routes to out routes to put whatever you want. You have somebody who can go over the top if you want. You have the sneaky little Adam Thielen, mother trucker sitting in the middle of the field. There's so many different things they can do. Can they create pressure, pass deflections, sacks? Can they get QB pressures? If they do, guess what? Minnesota probably wins. I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna say that's gonna be it. That will be the determining factor. That's my little speech for this. That's how the Jets won. So Diggs was handled well. Sauce Gardner made one mistake off the very first play of the game. Didn't make that mistake again. The secondary is kind of stepped up. Their defensive line is fine. They look like a top 10 defense right now to me.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else for anything else for this. One small offensive note: James Robinson outcarried Carter, but Carter was almost twice as effective as him on the ground.
So yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it'll change the carry so much. They both had a very small piece in the pass game. Garrett Wilson was the leading receiver again, so probably officially stardom territory for him.
Yeah, I almost mentioned him during the power rankings as a riser.
Yeah. So anything for you from this one before I go to the stats? Because this was a game that I'm sitting there like, how do they win this?
Right.
And you look at the stats. It's not even like they had a huge time of possession difference or any other thing. It's the strictly defensive side of the ball. They were a better defense than the Bills' defense.
Yeah, I mean, the turnovers are obviously a huge thing. Like Josh Allen threw 0 touchdowns and had 2 interceptions. You're not going to win a game like that. Granted, he made up for it with his 2 rushing touchdowns, but you need him to A, not throw any interceptions, and B, have at least one receiving touchdown. So yeah, the Jets defense came up big here. And Zach Wilson was actually like efficient. I mean, 18 for 25, not amazing, not bad. And their running game, 174 yards on the ground. That's not terrible at all.
No, not by a long shot. I mean, that's what we want with Breece Hall, and now you don't have him, and you're still getting it in other ways, which is
right.
Good. The big key to what you said, and it's true because it complements very well my point, but all of what I said means nothing. If you do not take care of the football, if you are not better with completions, and if you turn the ball over,
yeah,
if you are bad with those two, drives end, and you'll get beat. Even if your defense is great, at best you have the fourth quarter drive, and I think there's only one quarterback I'm taking over Josh Allen on a fourth quarter game-winning drive. That's Mahomes. He did it this past week.
Yeah. That seems ridiculous in the fourth quarter.
Other than that, also Mahomes led his team for rushing by a mile. Don't know how. He had more rush yards than Malik Willis, who's a running quarterback. I don't
right.
Other than that, congrats to the Jets. Big win. You lay on that defense because a lot of folks in the first 3-4 weeks slept on that defense. And it took until week 6 when I said, it's something interesting. They're creating pressure and they ain't blitzing.
Mm-hmm.
They're making quarterbacks panic without doing a lot.
Yeah.
They're working smarter, not harder on defense, and it's paying off. They're beating teams you probably would think they shouldn't beat.
Right. Yeah. Last note from a waiver wire perspective, if Wilson's available, obviously go after him. He might be in some leagues. I wouldn't be surprised.
Week 12 and week 14, there are 4 and 6 teams on bye respectively. 2 and 6 teams. Nobody on 13. I don't know why. Or maybe I have that backwards between 12 and 13. But that's 8 teams. You will probably need a wide receiver. Garrett Wilson's a good one to pick up at this point because the Jets go on bye this week. So
yeah, nobody week 12, week 13. There are buys.
Okay, week 12 is okay. I was
close.
Yep. Wilson 18 for 25, 154 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Check mark. Michael Carter 12 carries, 76 yards and a touchdown. Also had a 10-yard catch. James Robinson 13 carries for 48 yards. Garrett Wilson 8 catches on 9 targets for 92 yards. No other New York Jets receiver had more than 4 targets. That'd be Denzel Mims, or 3 catches, which is CJ Uzomah. Sad day for my Tyler Conklin pick. For Buffalo, Josh Allen 18 for 34, 205 yards, 2 interceptions. ran in for 2 touchdowns and 86 yards. Diggs 5 for 10, 5 catches, 10 targets, 93 yards. Gabriel Davis was two catches on 5 targets for 33 yards. Singletary 4 catches on 5 targets for 24 yards. Also had 8 carries for 24 yards. And again, Buffalo hosts Minnesota. Hopefully in a rebound game for them, but if your defense outperforms them, I think they're going to have a problem. And then therefore your offense should outperform them too.
Right.
And instead of it starting offensively and letting your defense catch up, it's the other way around. Anything else for this one, or shall I move on?
That's it.
All right. Next game, Seahawks and Cardinals. Cardinals are in deep.
Yeah.
Seattle has the best leg up in any division. I say that's my opinion on it. You look at all the other in the NFC anyway. If you look at all the other divisions, they're kind of close in almost every aspect. The NFC South is the best of the worst. The NFC East is the best of the best. Who are you really going to see at the top at the end? It's still up in the air. Seahawks look the most outstanding right now. The 49ers being the only team, in my opinion, that can challenge them, and they probably will. Due to their roster construction and who they have there. But Hopkins made Arizona move, like when he came back, and they're better offensively. But they're entering like a bottom dwelling of the rush ability. Like we talked about on Friday's show, we talked about Tampa Bay and the Rams not running the ball. Arizona's not far above them. I believe both the Rams and the Bucks have had their bye.
Yes. Have the Bucks. Yeah.
So both teams have had a bye. So I want to make sure I saw that correctly. So
I'm sorry. Bucks are next week. But yes, the Rams have.
Rams have. Okay. So I guess we can kind of throw the Bucks out of this just because it doesn't match up for stats. But if you take Kyler Murray's stats, because Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford are not rushing quarterbacks, no matter how much you want. If you take Kyler Murray's yards off of the total, okay, which again, most of those are from I got nowhere to throw, I got to run.
Yeah.
Right. He's a scrambling. There are a few design plays in there, so it's not all of them, and I get that. I don't want to take too much credit from Kyler Murray because he's a speedy guy. I get it. But if you take his yards off of their team total, they are about 8 yards per game above the Rams. Not good. Not good. James Conner, Darrell Williams, Eno Benjamin, their average is the one game that Eno Benjamin had like 130 yards is what's saving them from being the worst rushing team. And it's interesting that the Rams and the Cardinals are right there. Kyler Murray has 359 rush yards out of all the scrambling quarterbacks. Jackson, Hurts, Mariota. The Cardinals have the least amount of rush yards. Granted, that's all that the Falcons do. But look at the other two names.
Yeah.
There's no balance. There's no balance for these teams. They can win, especially when you have Hopkins, when you have Cooper Kupp. They can win these games. But without Murray's yards, they're 30th in the league. He effectively has 33% of their rush yards by himself.
Yeah, I mean, he had half this game.
Cardinals are also 4th in fumbles. It's literally all right there. They don't have any sort of run play balance. There's no play action that fools anybody.
Right.
You don't have that in your toolkit. You don't get an RPO option. You don't get any of that because it's going to be a pass or it's going to be Kyler Murray scrambling. Is that what caused them to lose this game? No, not really. The Seahawks are just good. Like they're effectively just better. Tyler Lockett exploded. Kenny Walker continues to be, I put it here, a top 5 RB, and because I'd say over the last 2 weeks he has been. I don't see anyone, you can't say Christian McCaffrey didn't play this week, so he didn't. There's a couple on bye that he probably would have been there fantasy-wise for moving him out of the top 5. But Geno's the top 5 quarterback in the NFC, at least, if not the league. You got to love the way this team looks on both sides of the ball. Jordan Brooks, the rookie, Woolen, Tyron Bolton. I'm saying his name wrong. Woolen, Woolen. The rookie, who's an absolute monster in the secondary.
Oh. Yeah, what is that? Anyways.
Anyway, but you know who I'm talking about. They're Mike Jackson has stepped up the last 2 weeks to be yet another. There's I can't pronounce his name. I saw him on our waiver wire in Wosu, their outside linebacker. He's only played like 50 or 60% of snaps the last 2 weeks. He has like 4 sacks in the last
Yeah.
2 weeks. He's been going nuts. Their defense is well underrated for a lot of other. Anyway, they don't turn the ball over much. They're in the bottom quarter of the league in interceptions. They're mid-pack and fumbles, but those to a certain extent are a little bit more hit or miss,
Right.
depending on whether they recover them or not. Cardinals really didn't have much of a chance in this game from the get. The offense kept moving. As far as the Seattle offense, Arizona's just had hiccups. I know they still have a couple of holes in their O line, but not having a run game and knowing they're throwing it, and it didn't go to DeAndre Hopkins as much as you would want.
Right.
You're
He
gonna
was
have
third in targets.
right. You're gonna run into a wall there. Geno Smith, 26 for 34, 275 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. That seems to be the theme of the day, matching Kirk Cousins and Taylor Heineke. Walker, 26 carries, 109 yards, 2 touchdowns. Thumbs up. Lockett, 5 for 5, 67 yards and a touchdown. Good. Awesome. Noah Fant, 5 catches for 6 targets, 96 yards. Led the league in receiving yards.
The team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said
This was something we called out because Arizona's not great against the tight ends, and it was either going to
I
be
picked the
him
wrong
or
one.
yeah, it was going to be him or Disley. I said pick one, you're
Disley had
whatever.
3 still, but it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Just not
Neither
the
one.
yardage.
Yeah. Metcalf, 5 catches and 6 targets, 37 yards and a touchdown for Arizona. Kyler Murray, 25 for 35. Good on completion for the most part. 175 yards, 2 touchdowns. He rushed for 60 yards, 8 rushes for 60 yards. He was sacked 5 times for 35 yards, which screams to me he wasn't close to the line of scrimmage when he was moving and he got taken down.
Yeah.
So he's trying to scramble because there's no pass. You see theme building here. Also had 2 fumbles and lost one of them. So
Right.
it screams the holes in the offensive line, but B, there's no rush. There's nothing there. If somebody gets through, he has to find some place to throw it away or he gets sacked. Rondale Moore, almost said Roquan. That's the other linebacker and not this linebacker who's not a linebacker. Rondale Moore, 8 catches on 10 targets. This one was 69 yards.
Hey.
And Zach Ertz, 5 catches on 8 targets, 40 yards and a touchdown. Hopkins, 5 targets, 4 catches, 36 yards, 1 touchdown to save that fantasy day. I say it's more of an outlier. Like, again, we talk about with those top 5s, touchdowns don't save somebody. And that kind of happened here with DeAndre Hopkins. Is what it is, but you can't, obviously you're going to fire him up. Like, at worst, he's catching a touchdown, right? Up next, Seattle travels to Munich, going to Germany. NFL's first game in Germany, which will happen this Sunday against
I did
the
not
Tampa
realize
Bay
that.
Buccaneers. Yeah. The Buccaneers will continue to not run the football, and Tom Brady will get angry at his offensive line. It's almost fitting because everything that is said in Germany in German sounds very angry. So maybe he'll just learn how to scream at them in German and it'll fit. And for Seattle, they'll probably go there and dominate that football game by like 17 points.
Yeah, right.
Arizona is going to host the Rams in a game that will have 1% rushing and 99% throwing. Anything else from this one for you? I feel like I really also, side note, I don't want anything to do with that Rams Cardinals game. I hate all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. Wet sock again. Just wet, the wettest of socks. Like, you ever left your car? You ever left your windows down and it rains?
Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah, that game, I'd rather sit in that seat for 3 hours than watch 3 hours of Arizona versus the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, more if he's available. James Conner, maybe. He was actually involved in the receiving game. And honestly, I might grab Fant. He seems like he's becoming the tight end of favor here.
It's good to see because I just traded him away because I didn't think that would happen. And if it does happen, so be it. But no, in all reality, he's become. I mean, he's another tool. If you have a tight end, it makes your offense. You can't forget about him.
Right.
The Chiefs have one. Their offense is good. The Ravens don't really have good wide receivers, but they have a great tight end, and their offense moves. tight ends and focusing on them is so important. And can't say it more than what these two teams just showed you.
Mhm.
I mean, Murray had 175 yards, and the team had a horrible 110 or something on the ground, 120 on the ground.
122, yeah.
Yeah, and Ertz had a touchdown, and the team only lost by 10, and they got 20 points out of it, 21 points. So tight ends make the world go around, baby. Not really. That's kind of a lie. We're gonna take our final break. We got 2 more games here. We're gonna real quick after those 2 games, just go through an express lane and kind of speed it right along. We're also gonna go through our host results, which I've kind of already touched on for the most part, and we'll also go through the 5 fantasy flyer results, which I haven't calculated, but I'm fairly confident you won. Did you know that? Because yeah, Foreman didn't do anything. Duvernay did. Yeah, you won. So I don't.
Let's
I can look at
go.
that. I don't even have to.
Clawing my way back.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah, Palmer had 8 catches for a lot.
Yeah.
And then Garrett Wilson had also had 8 catches for a good amount of points. So yeah, you won that one pretty handily. I don't even. There's your 5 fantasy flyer results. I lost. It's all right. We'll let you. We got to give him some hope. We got to give him some hope, ladies and gents. All right. So everybody's team Derek and HostvHost. It's okay. Derek's got a plan, and it's gonna be play better at that game. Sign us out. Take us to part 3, Taylor.
We'll see y'all on the other side.
And welcome back to the final part 3 of Fantasy Flyer, episode 19. We're going to finish off the week 9 review, some of our fantasy thoughts. Yes, indeed, sir. Yes, indeed. We're going to pick up, let me get back over to the show plan because I screwed this one up. Rams and Buccaneers. Oh, boy. Just, do we have to, you know?
Yeah.
Did we have to? So let's start talking positive first before we get too far into this. Tom Brady led a comeback drive. Thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah.
Got to be positive. Got to stay positive. That's kind of where this ends. Cooper Kupp. That's another positive thing. He had 127 yards of Stafford's 165. The Rams have big play capability. Always have, like they have all year. Been pretty good. Okay. Let's see. Cade Otton led Tampa Bay in receiving yards. It's good.
That's what I was gonna. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
That's
go.
Yeah. He's coming alive. He's good. Leave Cameron Braid alone. He's fine in the sideline. Scotty Miller had 8 targets. I think that's another.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Apparently, the Rams did something decent with Godwin and Evans. Evans was 5 for 11 with 40 yards. Godwin 7 for 10 with 36 yards. They took the deep ball away, which for a team that doesn't run very successfully, I mean, you're starting to limit the offense. You're keeping them in a bubble. But your team won much better, Los Angeles. I don't understand why. Now we're gonna go negative. So sorry. I don't understand why Brady can't do that final drive other times.
I've always felt that way, even when he was with like the Pats. He always plays so much better when he's under that pressure that he has to. And I don't know if that's because, they're playing their game plan, they're sticking to it, and then at the end of the game, he just has to make those decisions and they step out of their box. I don't know what it is.
If the decision making, let's ask Cardi B. Cardi B, do you think it's odd that Tom Brady doesn't always do these drives, but when it absolutely is imperative that they go ahead and march downfield, do you think that it's weird that he can just automatically do it?
That's suspicious. That's weird.
Yeah, I think it is. It's odd. He is still one of the greatest of all time. We know that. Why you have these pieces in the final drive? You didn't even throw it to Evans or Godwin, but once a piece. It was Scotty Miller. It was Cade Otton for the touchdown. It was Cade Otton earlier in the drive. I don't get it. I don't understand. I know the offensive line's a problem. Did they stop being a problem for 45 seconds? I don't.
Right.
Why can't you do that for 22 minutes a game? You know, like yeah. Neither team ran the ball well, which shocker, spoiler alert, called that one. They're the two worst running teams in the league right now. It's okay. Bucks lead the NFC South again, which is not an impressive accomplishment. That's where we expected them to be, but they're also 5-4, 4-5. They're 4-5.
Mhm.
Um,
I think everyone in that division has a losing record.
yeah, they're leading with 4-5.
Yeah, tied with the Falcons. Good God.
Yeah, and the Falcons lost, Panthers lost, Bucks lost, Jaguars won, but Jaguars are in the AFC. Excuse me. What's the other team there? Falcons,
Saints.
Saints. Oh, yeah. Well, Saints lost too. So, the Bucks needed to win because they went from fourth to first or something like that. No, third to first. Yeah, they're 4-5 leading the division, and Bill Belichick is 5-4 last in the AFC East. Heartbreaking. The Rams. I don't know how that works out either. That's how it's playoffs, right?
Yeah.
As for the Rams, I feel like they're just lost. They are 29th in plays over 25 yards. Okay. That's like their offense. Like you saw the big playability. Cooper Kupp, how long was his touchdown catch in this game?
69 yards.
Oh, hey. So first off, half his yards came on one play, right?
Yeah.
But more importantly, a third of Stafford's yards came on one play. That's all that this team. Let's go back to the Cowboys game versus the Rams. I'm only bringing this up because I watched the game and it's the first one that comes to mind. They had the same thing. They had one big play to Cooper Kupp, who ran it all the way to the field for a touchdown. And other than that, if that doesn't happen, they don't get 2 or 3 field goals.
Right.
There's nothing impressive about it. They're 29th in plays over 25 yards. So that's all to say that. They're 10th in time of possession. So they have the ball a lot. They're last in rush yards, like we talked about. Cooper Kupp is probably the only thing that makes this team look successful in any aspect. That's about. I don't have anything else to really say. I can be super critical of them all day long. Somehow they've managed to win 3 football games.
Yeah.
They're 3-6 now, if I'm not mistaken, and they
3 and
choked in this
5.
game. They effectively choked. I hate to use the chick word, but they choked. They were up 13-6.
Yep.
13-9. They're up 13-6 and didn't score from then on. And I don't want to say that's because of the Bucks defense. They are good, but it's just not that the Rams aren't a powerful offense anymore. I don't have anything
A lot
else.
of field goals in this game.
Yeah, choose the kickers. I mean, if the Bucks are involved, you probably should choose.
Honestly, I was gonna say that. Suck up.
Yeah, choose him. He's gonna have 4 field goals because they can't get in the end zone for squat.
Yeah.
Brady 36 for 58, 280 yards, 1 touchdown. He crossed 100,000 throwing yards this game. There's another positive thing. Rashad White 8 carries for 27 yards. Leonard Fournette 9 carries for 19 yards. Fournette came out. A report came out today about Fournette saying that he was extremely frustrated with his playing time. And you're not going to be the RB1 for long. I don't know how to say it nicely.
I mean, if he wants more playing time, do more with his opportunities. I don't know. I mean, I guess obviously the offensive line doesn't help, but Rashad White had a whole yard and 3.3 than him per carry. So
yeah, that's Rashad White. Yeah. And he can catch the ball. That's why they drafted him. So, Fournette had 5 catches for 41 yards, which is all handy dandy. But I can pay a lot less if I'm the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for Rashad White for the next 3 years. I can pay you. It's shocking to me that he can't get it going. I know it's not just him, but it's also a large part of just him. Cade Otton, 5 catches on 6 targets, 68 yards and a touchdown. Scotty Miller, 7 catches on 8 targets for 53 yards. We went over Evans and Godwin already. For the Rams, I only put 2 names here because there's no other stats. That's it. It's Stafford, 13 for 27, 48% completion. Get it out. 165 yards and a touchdown. Okay, like Justin Fields Jr. without the running.
Right.
Doesn't feel light. Cooper Kupp, 8 catches, 9 targets, 127 yards, and a touchdown. Man, if he could have 200 yards every single week, if they had just more threats
Right.
in any aspect, they would have to leave him in man coverage sometimes. But you can literally guess the play is going to be a throw and that it's going to Cooper Kupp. And you're probably right. He had 8 of Stafford's 13 catches. Disgusting. Disgusting. Like I said, Rams take on Arizona next week. Tampa Bay goes to Munich to take on Seattle. I don't think either of these teams wins a lot of games the rest of this year unless something changes. They're bad offenses. They're bad.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that Byron Leftwich isn't way more critical on the sideline. Like he was able to keep his calm and to kind of make some play calls and help Tom Brady effectively lead the game-winning drive. Oh boy, he's a candidate for a hot seat if they don't get moving. That's
Yeah.
my take. A candidate for a hot seat. Not to say that he would be, but this team. I don't think Bruce Arians would solve this either. Just like that.
No. Yeah.
Anything else for this one from you?
No.
All right. Sunday night football game, Titans and Chiefs. First half, bit of a surprise. All right. Titans, they came into this game. I mean, both of them were 5-2 coming into this game. 5-2. So Titans in the first half, they almost locked down the Chiefs. It was really, they led like 17-9 at the halftime. 17-10. I'm close.
They were 14-9.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's what I said. But Mahomes in the pass game kind of struggled. I watched the first half of this game, and it wasn't warming for Kansas City fans. But it's Patrick Mahomes. Like you don't lose faith in Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
It seemed like they were like putting a lot of zone coverages, but they were also putting like Kevin Byard directly on Travis Kelce. So it was like a spy on a tight end. And then they would wait for pressure to make Mahomes move out, and the zones were just really, I don't know, they were really good. Let's just put it that way. Juju with his 3rd straight week of 20 fantasy points. That's what I read. And I think do you think he's a wide receiver 1 at this point?
I wouldn't put him as a wide receiver 1. I'd still put him in the wide receiver 2. Maybe mid wide receiver 2, at best high end wide receiver 2.
Okay.
I mean, he's consistent. I wouldn't mind having him as my second wide receiver, but I would not want him as my first.
Do you think he's Kansas City's wide receiver 1?
Yes.
Okay. I agree. But there's a lot of players that need to be started on that offense.
Yeah.
Cole Hardman and Travis Kelce.
Nicole Hardman may be available, and I might actually go after him. This is becoming consistent.
In one of your other leagues, I hope, because somebody already picked him up from
earlier. Yeah.
He's a great target. It's his 3rd straight week with at least a touchdown or at least 10 fantasy points.
Yeah.
Kadarius Toney debuted. He had 2 catches for 12 yards. He only played 9% of snaps, which, like I mentioned on Friday's show, you got to wait and see how this plays out because he's not going to jump in. I'm going to hold off on him this week. And they play Jacksonville, who lets everybody catch the ball. I don't see an easy path for him to becoming a starter. Obviously, Juju and Hardman are there. Both of those guys are gone this year. So bide your time. Obviously I don't think he's viable in 10 or 12 team leagues. Dynasty leagues, you could stash him, especially if you're out this year. If you're at the point where I'm done. Well,
yeah.
Tony's there. Let me pick him up on a keeper league and see if he's there next year. Don't hate it at all. For the Titans, like I said earlier when we were talking about our power rankings, Derrick Henry makes this team move. He had more yards than Malik Willis did throwing. So that should tell you something. Malik Willis had 80 yards in the air, 20 on the ground, or it should be 40 on the ground. Henry had 115 yards on the ground. So I guess if you count the rush yards, he didn't have That's fair.
Malik Willis
Um,
looking like Mariota at some of his games.
Mariota's making Malik Willis look like Mariota light. It's
Yeah.
bad. This team needs Tannehill, and I don't think Willis isn't looking like the quarterback answer.
No.
He isn't looking like it. I know it's early. He's like started 2 games. One of them Sunday Night Football. It's the Chiefs. He's not. The team doesn't move with him. A wide receiver hasn't caught a ball during his 2 starts. What? How? Who are you throwing it to?
Yeah.
Yeah. In this game, was the rookie tight end. I can't pronounce his last name.
Okonkwo? Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, Okonkwo. Okay, maybe I can pronounce his last name. That's not who I was thinking of. But yeah, he had the 48-yard, which was, by the way, a great catch. But he's a tight end. Then Austin Hooper had 2 catches, and he targeted wide receivers. He
Right.
made it look like he wanted them to catch the ball. I just don't understand how this team has any chance of competing with anything offensively. Now their defense, they figure out, obviously they'll beat you to death slowly if their defense figures you out, because they held the Kansas City Chiefs in check for most of the first half. I am expecting Treylon Burks to come back from IR next 10 to 12 days. He should probably be activated from his turf injury. I don't know if I'm excited about that if I'm the Treylon Burks owner.
Not unless Tannehill comes back.
Not yet. Even then, man, he wasn't throwing the couple weeks before he left. Better chance though. Mahomes outran everybody but Derrick Henry in this game. Mahomes had 63 rush yards, had a rushing touchdown, had a rushing 2-point conversion.
Mm-hmm.
Let the man run. I mean, the other side to this is Kansas City's losing its rush game. So we just talked about the Cardinals and the Rams and the Buccaneers and not running. It didn't really work. They didn't really run anything here. It is a little different when you have 8 people to catch a pass and one of them's always going to be open. But they also weren't for a little bit. Like they got slowed up. Chiefs, that is the number 1 scoring offense, only scored 20 points and needed overtime to get there.
Right.
But Kansas City did come from behind. The arm of Patrick Mahomes, it fails rarely. Say that 5 times fast. 43 for 68, 446 yards, a touchdown, had an interception, had the rush yards and the rushing 2-point conversion. Travis Kelce, 17 targets, 10 catches, 106 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster, 12 catches, 12 targets, 10 catches, 88 yards. I'll get it out. McCole Hardman, 9 targets, 6 catches, 79 yards, and a touchdown. For Tennessee, Willis was 5 for 16, 80 yards in the air, 40 on the ground. Henry, 115 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns.
That's it.
Yeah, Chiefs didn't look like they were going to win this game.
No.
But overtime rules. So
neither team really necessarily deserved to win this game.
Anything else for you from this one? Kansas City's at home to take on Jacksonville Sunday. Tennessee takes on Denver. The Broncos coming off bye.
Yeah, no, that's it. Maybe Tony gets more involved in a couple of weeks, but I think they found their top 3 options: Kelce, Juju, Mecole Hardman.
Yeah. Moving on to our Express Lane segment. We'll start off Ravens and Saints. Ravens win 27-13. Ravens using the rush mostly to succeed. The Saints used failed 3rd downs. The Saints are close to a bottom 5 out of our power rankings. They were 26. I think I stopped at 27, but 26 is the Saints for me. They need something different. I don't know if it's Jameis Winston. They may just have to wait until the offseason. This team is not they're not prepared to win the NFC South. Not like the Bucs or the Panthers or the Falcons really are either. Isaiah Likely is on his pace probably to be a top 15, maybe top 20 tight end next year, even with Mark Andrews. We kind of saw that kind of work with Hayden Hurst a few years ago. Could have worked again. And Kenyon Drake is firmly the 2 on the depth chart. Those are a couple takeaways from this game. Dalton, 19 for 29, 210 yards, touchdown and an interception. Olave had 6 catches for 71 yards. Likely only 1 catch. Led the team in receiving, 24 yards, but also had the lone receiving touchdown. Kenyon Drake, 93 yards and 2 touchdowns. Baltimore is on bye this week. New Orleans travels to Pittsburgh in what will surely be a stinky poo-poo cheddar football game. Chargers at the Falcons, 20-17. Chargers win this one. The Falcons won the first quarter, though, mostly on the ground. 7-0. Los Angeles storms back. Eckler with a couple touchdowns, one in the air, one on the ground. Called that from Friday's show. The Chargers moved the ball well without Allen or Williams. Josh Palmer, Carter, and Bandy had good share of the targets all the way around. Chargers
And Everett.
And Everett. Yep. Chargers win the second quarter, and it was a close game throughout. Basically, from there, rushing ruled the roost. You can see that. Cordero Patterson not as involved as you would expect, but he also had 2 touchdowns. So, Chargers come through with a game-winning field goal on the final drive. Herbert, 30 for 43 in the air, 245 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Eckler had 47 rush yards, touchdown on the ground, 7 catches, 24 yards, touchdown in the air. Palmer, 8 catches on 10 targets, 106 yards. Mariota was 12 for 23, 129 yards, rushed for 24. Tyler Algier, 10 carries for 99 yards. Cordero Patterson, 13 carries for 44 yards, also had 2 rushing touchdowns. London with 3 catches on 7 targets for 23 yards. Chargers will take on the 49ers in Sunday Night Football. The Falcons will travel to Carolina for Thursday Night Football, which I'll preview very quickly. I'm not watching it. There's my Thursday night. No, I won't be able to watch it. I have a previous engagement. Real quick, we could see very much a repeat of the last matchup, which just went scoring. Atlanta is bad to the secondary. We saw that. Palmer 8 for 10. Bandy had 6 targets and caught a bunch. DeAndre Carter had 40 yards. Like they're not very good. Eckler, of course, all that fun stuff. It could kind of be the same thing against Carolina again. If Sam Darnold starts, I take the Panthers in this one. Anything else, I think I still take Atlanta. So that's kind of my swap for it. Speaking of the Panthers, they lose 21-42 against the Bengals in Cincinnati. PJ Walker out, Baker back in, and Darnold incoming. That's about all I got for that quarterback station. Mayfield took over at halftime. Kind of defined 2 separate problems with Carolina in this game. Defense couldn't hold the door open, let alone an attacking offense. And the offense was putrid with Walker at the helm. And together it combined for a giant blowout by halftime. Obviously, the story of this game, Joe Mixon, I don't need to say a whole heck of a lot more than that. 4 rushing touchdowns and a catching touchdown, receiving touchdown. Massive day. He had more fantasy points on offense than all of the Carolina Panthers. It's almost true. I think it actually legit. I think it almost is true because Terrence Marshall was the leading receiver. Deontay Foreman had less than 50 yards, right? And then Baker had 2 touchdowns on 150 some yards, 155 yards. Yeah. So Marshall had a touchdown on 53 yards, 3 catches on 6 targets, 53 touchdown. DJ Moore had 6 targets, but didn't catch, I think caught 2 of them.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm going to say that Mixon probably firmly outscored Carolina in this game from a fantasy standpoint. Carolina's defense just never really got their footing, and the longer that took, the more Joe Mixon was down the field. This was kind of the fast adaptation that we mentioned about Cincinnati. Okay, we're going to perform bad for 1 week without Jamar Chase, and then we're going to find someone else to explode on the scene. First game all season that Mixon has really been, I put playable, but that's the wrong word. He's been
dominant.
Yeah, there we go. His dominant self. Last year, he averaged like 18 or 20 fantasy points a game. He was averaging like 10 up until this. So, yeah, like I mentioned earlier in the show, he had 55 fantasy points in PPR formats for this game, but he only had 78 fantasy points in the previous 7 games combined. So, Mayfield, 155 yards, 2 touchdowns. Deontay Foreman, 23 rush yards. Burrow, 22 for 28, 206 yards, 1 touchdown in the air. It went to Joe Mixon. Mixon, 153 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns, 4 catches, 58 yards, 1 touchdown, 6 hot dogs, 4 different coaches and he also adopted a child at halftime. It was amazing. T. Higgins, 7 catches on 8 targets for 60 yards. Carolina, Atlanta on Thursday Night Football. Cincinnati's on bye. Packers and Lions, two decent to good offenses that spend half the game turning the ball over. Best way to describe it. It's just like I think there's 5 red zone turnovers in this game, or 4, and another one outside of the red zone. It was bad, and that's between both teams. Rodgers had 3 interceptions in the red zone. It's his first 3 interception game of his career.
Wow.
I wrote that down because I heard it on, and I didn't fact check it before I wrote it. And now I'm thinking I probably should have. But if he did, either way, he doesn't have many of those. I know 2 interception games for him were a rarity. Yeah, many Green Bay players got hurt, like you kind of covered in the 9 segment. I'm not going to touch on them a lot. It's if they don't have Aaron Jones this week, they're absolutely done for against Dallas.
Yeah.
Detroit survived and honestly looked better than Green Bay, but that's kind of like saying that my 5-year-old's painting looked better than my toddler's. So, do you think Rodgers is out after the season, whether it be for retirement because Green Bay wants to win, whatever it might be?
If I were him, I would retire after this season.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Rodgers, 293 yards, 3 interceptions, nothing else. Lazard, he did have a touchdown. He threw a touchdown out. 4 catches, 87 yards, touchdown for Lazard. Goff, 137 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4 catches on 9 targets, 55 yards. Green Bay takes on Dallas in Lambeau, which is probably the only hope that Green Bay has this week. And then Detroit travels to Chicago. I'll still take Chicago in that game. Moving on, Colts, Patriots. I'm going to chat about this one for a minute. I'll save the Colts for a minute because a lot of good things the Patriots did in this one. Mac Jones, perfectly fine. Ramondre Stevenson did what needed to be done. Like just 15 carries for 60 yards for Stevenson, had 3 catches on 10 yards for a touchdown. He's the RB1 there. Damian Harris coming back doesn't matter. I'm still firmly under the belief Damian Harris will not be there come next July or August.
Yeah.
You got to be, and I don't know where he's going to play. There's so many good RBs that are going to be free agents. So many. Tony Pollard is the first one that comes to mind. I'd take Pollard over Harris myself. Let me see. Jacoby Myers, 5 catches for 42 yards. Hunter Henry, 4 catches for 50 yards. Those are the 2 leading receivers for New England. All right. Now, let's chat about the Colts for a second. So the Colts, like we mentioned, they fired Frank Reich on Monday, finally. I think I said it in our chat Sunday when this game ended, and I said, LMAO, Frank Reich needs to be fired.
Yeah.
And literally 15 hours later, my Twitter feed blows up because Frank Reich got fired. I said on Friday's show, he has to have the hottest seat in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
You can sense these things and when the changes need to happen. And yeah, that needed to happen. So let's get that out of the way. A lot of people were like, this is silly. Why did they fire Frank Reich? Because he wasn't doing anything. Changing out the quarterback that you handpicked 7 games into the season is telling people that you failed without telling people that you failed. It's showing them. Oh, I picked the wrong guy. I'm not doing the right stuff. Bye. It couldn't save the team from this game, however. Ellinger got destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. Okay. He threw for, I said less than 100 yards. He got to 101, if I'm not mistaken.
103.
Just over 103. Ooh. Okay. He was sacked 9 times for 60 yards. 9.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's bad. It's bad. The O-line. This is a guy who scrambles. He couldn't scramble. How bad is your O-line when I'm going to say it. It's not the quarterback. I hope Jeff Saturday, who, by the way, is off the hook for this entire season.
Right.
This is Frank Reich's problem that's been created. You can say Jeff Saturday needs to do this. Oh my God, he can't do that. Oh my blah, 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 blah. He was literally just handed a 476-piece puzzle that was wet from somebody spraying it with a garden hose, and they told him to put it together.
I was going to say a paper bag of poop on fire.
Yeah, that sounds bad. Yeah, he was sacked 9 times for 30 yards, or for 60 yards, excuse me. We'll back it up again. I don't think Ellinger should start yet. I think he should sit under Orion for the rest of the year come in blowouts one way or the other, because they
Mhm.
will happen. This is why Jeff Saturday's not on the hook. If you get blown out, but you have Matt Ryan starting, you're at least letting the kid learn instead of, I don't know, let me throw him in. Because that's about what he did. Josh Oosh.
I think it's I
Uche?
think that yeah the like A is pronounced at the end, but I don't know. It's like Uche or yeah.
Yeah, he had 3 sacks. There were also 3 more by
Matthew Judon, body built by Taco Bell.
the worst game for Indiana all year long. Indianapolis. I think they had less than 200 yards of full offense. It was just atrocious. I don't know who either team plays next. I didn't write that down. Colts. Well, Colts play the Raiders. I know that much. I don't know about New England
Pats
yet.
are on bye.
Pats are on bye. Good. So I didn't have to write it down. I didn't know. Speaking of the Raiders, Raiders lost to the Jaguars. This is the last game of our express lane. Jaguars 27, Raiders 20. Raiders gave up the first half lead of more than 10 points for the 3rd time in 5 weeks and the 4th time in 7 weeks. Get the heck out.
They didn't score at all in the second half. Not even a field goal.
Does that sound familiar to you? Do you remember the Chiefs game where they led 17-0? Or how about the Cardinals game where they led 24-3 or something like that?
Yeah.
They lost both of those football games. I don't know what is wrong with this team in the second half. Like, do they need to get on treadmills during halftime and just not sit down? Like, I don't.
If right.
Yeah, keep them going. Adams is dependable based on his target share. Another one that you could probably argue is very close to that, to the 5 in any power rankings for a wide receiver. I get it. Jacobs to me is falling down the power rankings. I think we talked about that earlier. Don't need to beat a dead horse with that one. He's had two straight weeks, mid RB1 to RB2 play, not top 5 for me. The Raiders defense is non-existent under pressure. And what I mean by under pressure is when they have to perform, they don't.
Yeah.
They stop. The Jaguars came back in this game and they did it at their own pace. They took their time. They didn't, they let Etienne get some, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, Etienne, Christian Kirk, Etienne, Zay Jones. Pick them off, get 10 yards, get 14. Raiders stopped caring.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And then they released Jonathan Abrams, which again, I get it. If you don't want to resign him, you didn't get anything at the trade deadline for him, that's perfectly fine. But if you don't get better on the defensive end, you're going to look more stupid for that. Letting any piece of your defense go, because you can't really pick up one. Like, you can go and sign one. I don't get the movement for it. ETN is a huge change in the dynamics for Jacksonville. Easy to say, opens up the playbook, pass catching. He's not bad at blocking, but that's not his main shtick. Carr 21 for 36, 259 yards, 2 touchdowns. Adams 10 catches for 17 yards, 146. Excuse me, let's try that again. Adams 10 catches on 17 targets, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs had 67 rush yards, 3 catches, 20 yards in the air. For the Jaguars, Lawrence was 25 for 31. Check. 235 yards, 1 touchdown, no turnovers. Check. ETN, 28 carries for 109 yards, 2 touchdowns. Running game, check. Christian Kirk, 8 for 9, 76 yards and a touchdown. Zay Jones and Marvin Jones with 5 receptions each. They spread the ball. Check. You wonder how they came back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Raiders take on the Colts, which is going to be. You ever seen 2 corpses fight in a zombie movie? It might be pretty close. Jacksonville. Put the schedule up. Why am I not looking at it? Oh, because that's not this schedule. Who's Jacksonville play this week? Are they on bye?
The Chiefs.
Oh, that's right. I did say that like 4 minutes ago. Yeah, Jacksonville. They're in Kansas City for that game.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the end of the entire slate. I feel there's so much to talk about and yet so little to talk about at the same time, because it's rough with some of these teams. It's rough with some of the outlook for some of these teams. It's rough. And then there's other teams that are just excelling in ways like, who would have thought that we would be talking about the Raiders looking like garbage, but the Bears being a top 10 to top 15 team.
Right.
Like week 2, I would have been like, and here we are. That's how quickly this stuff can change. That is
Yeah.
how quickly stuff can change. Yeah. Host v host results. We both got Kansas City right. That was the third of our host v host games. Forgot to mention that. No correct scores this week. You're gonna gain 9 plus the 15 for the 5 fantasy flyers that you got correct.
Hot
Palmer, Palmer with 8 for. I mean, him alone. He had 8 catches for 106 yards. That alone, his 18 points beat my entire team. I'm just being honest. Crossing out Deion Johnson and Deontay Foreman because we both had them.
Deion Jackson, yeah.
Is that what I said?
Deion Johnson.
Sure, whatever.
Close enough.
Wrong sport. But yeah, you're gonna get 24 points for all of that. I'm going to get a measly 6 because the Bears did not win. So I have 103. You have 92.
All right. Now we got something going.
Yeah, there we go.
Within reach.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Give it time. Give it time. Let him think he's got a chance. We're all good.
You're
I don't
about to
think
blow it in the second half.
That's I'm like the Raiders. More offensive stuff for the Raiders. Yeah, we're gonna come back on Friday just to preview Friday show. Pretty standard, I think. We'll have our week 10 preview. We'll go through our host v host games. We'll have a 4 down segment, and we'll give you the 5 fantasy flyers. Next Tuesday. Nope, wrong week. Wrong. That's the wrong week. Thanksgiving week on Tuesday.
Yeah.
We will not have a show. Sundays. That's Sunday, and I'm warning. I didn't tell you any of this, but Tuesday I won't be able to do a show that week.
That's fine.
So that is, I'm sure it is too, because so with no show on that Tuesday. Sundays we're going to do Friday's show, and we'll probably do one over the weekend if that's okay.
I think we can fit that in, yeah.
We're adults, so we have to talk about our schedule. We're gonna do it right there on the air. I don't care if you watch. So, at some point, it doesn't have to be whether it's Sunday, Monday, Saturday. I don't care, but we'll do a special Thursday preview, and then Friday, which would be Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, we'll be back for our normal schedule. I don't think there's anything else from this show. We did another cracking round. Overall, just to wrap up in the entirety of the show, like there's some really disappointing teams. Tom Brady.
I want a divorce.
I just ever since that he's not been good. I want Brady to step up with the Buccaneers. I don't think there's any hope for the Rams. The Bucs have the tools to do it. I think the Bucs win the NFC South. That's my early projection. I still think that, and I actually think they're going to win by like 2 or 3 games. So I'm going to bring that up. Yeah, I have nothing else for this. Any other things you want to say before we sign off? We get a little extra time.
I mean, to that point with Brady, I almost want to take like $1 and throw it on them to win the Super Bowl, just out of like ridiculousness. Like, what are the odds on that? And like,
the guy is drunk, but there we go. He's gonna put. And honestly, the odds for that are probably like
they gotta be insanely good. Yeah,
probably plus 2,500. You probably win $25 for $1 if that actually happened. That's just I'm okay. Why not? Yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode of the Fantasy Flyer. My name's Derek. This guy's Taylor. I'm gonna play my little Bob Barker sign out for everybody.
Bob Barker reminding you.
Peace out, y'all.
Population.
Peace out.
And
Catch us
Friday.
Friday. Fantasy
Goodbye,
Flyer,
everybody.
episode 20.